Oh, hello! I do recognise you. My gosh, that's just my cat. Oh, I will do. Oh, I think I remember.
When the schedule was supposed to stay locked in place, something completely unexpected shattered the routine in the middle of a royal engagement. And it all started with Princess Catherine doing the unthinkable in front of everyone watching. She was right there in the middle of an official royal visit with everything in motion, cameras flashing non-stop, security tightly positioned around her, and hundreds of eyes locked in on every step she took, like she was under a spotlight that never turns off. Every move was supposed to follow strict royal timing, no gaps, no pauses, no surprises. And then out of nowhere, Catherine broke away from the entire setup, like she had flipped a switch in her mind. She ignored the polished royal protocol that normally controls every second of her public life. She walked straight past the planned route, straight through the crowd, past the barriers holding people back, past the handlers trying to keep everything aligned, and straight past the unwritten royal rules nobody is supposed to bend. Security instantly tensed up, scanning the situation like something had gone wrong. Staff members froze mid-action, unsure if they were witnessing a mistake or a moment that was never supposed to happen. The atmosphere shifted instantly, like the air itself had changed pressure. Right there in the crowd stood an old man nobody seemed to recognize at first glance, just another quiet face among the volunteers. And then Catherine reached him and wrapped him in a full emotional hug that had no formality, no distance, no royal stiffness, just pure human connection, exploding in real time. The entire crowd went silent in shock, like someone had pressed pause on reality itself. And then, almost instantly, that silence turned into emotion, with people visibly tearing up as they tried to understand what they were witnessing in front of them. Security exchanged sharp glances, trying to process why the future Queen of England had just stepped outside every rule she was trained to follow for this one single moment of recognition. And that's when the biggest question hit everyone watching. Who exactly was this man that could pull Princess Catherine out of royal protocol like that without warning, without hesitation, and without explanation at first sight? The entire moment felt unreal, like something that shouldn't happen in such a controlled environment. But it was happening right there in front of everyone, raw and unfiltered. And before anyone could even process it fully, the emotional energy of the scene spread fast through the crowd, turning confusion into curiosity, and curiosity into complete emotional overload. Because what made this even more powerful was the fact that nothing about it was planned at all. No briefing, no advance notice, no PR coordination, nothing. Everything about this encounter was spontaneous, and that is what made it hit even harder for everyone watching it unfold in real time. And in that split second, the entire royal schedule didn't matter anymore because something deeply personal had just taken over the moment. People in the crowd started whispering, trying to figure out the connection, trying to piece together why Catherine reacted so strongly to someone who looked so ordinary at first glance. And that mystery only made the moment more intense because the emotional weight of it was building second by second. Before the identity was even revealed, the atmosphere was already heavy with emotion. Like everyone could feel that this wasn't just a random interaction. It was something rooted in years of history. And that question kept echoing through everyone's mind louder and louder. What kind of memory could be powerful enough to stop a royal visit in its tracks like this? The scene was no longer just about protocol or appearance. It had turned into something deeply human, something personal, something impossible to ignore. And right at the center of it all stood Catherine, still holding on to that moment like time itself had slowed down just for her. The reveal hits harder than anyone expected, and the truth behind the man changes everything about what people thought they were seeing. His name is Jim Embury, and he wasn't a politician, celebrity, or royal insider, just a retired teacher quietly volunteering at the museum, blending into the crowd like any other visitor helping out for the day. But for Princess Catherine, he wasn't just another face in the crowd at all. Because decades earlier, long before crowns, titles, and global attention, Jim Embry had been her history teacher at St. Andrew's School, back when she was just a young student trying to understand the world step by step. That detail alone shifted the entire meaning of the moment instantly, because it wasn't random at all. It was personal, deeply rooted in memory. Imagine that for a second, standing there as a volunteer, completely unaware that the student you once taught is now one of the most recognized women in the world, and she's walking straight toward you with recognition in her eyes. Catherine didn't hesitate, didn't second guess, didn't look for approval from anyone around her. She just moved with certainty, like time had folded back on itself. And when she embraced him, it wasn't just a greeting. It was years of memory, respect, and gratitude colliding in a single powerful moment that nobody in that crowd will ever forget. Jim Embry stood there visibly emotional, caught in a moment he likely never imagined would happen in his lifetime. Because teachers rarely get to see how far their impact travels, and this was one of those rare moments where it all came back full circle in the most unexpected way. And what made it even more powerful was how grounded it all felt. Despite happening in a royal setting filled with structure and formality, there was no performance in that hug, no public display for attention. It was simply recognition between two people whose paths had crossed long before the world was watching. The crowd could feel it too, and that's why so many people reacted emotionally. Because it wasn't staged or scripted, it was real. And in that instant, every rule about distance, protocol, and formality disappeared, replaced by something far more human and far more powerful. This was the kind of moment that doesn't need explanation in the moment itself, because the emotion speaks louder than anything else happening around it. Even the staff, who are used to controlling every detail of royal appearances, were left stunned, because nothing in their preparation covered a moment like this. And still, Catherine stayed fully present in it, holding that connection as if she understood exactly how meaningful it was. That simple statement carried even more weight than anyone realized in the moment. "The things you taught me, I now teach to my children." Those words didn't just describe memory, they showed legacy, continuity, and impact, stretching across generations without anyone planning it. Because what started in a classroom years ago had now reached a completely new chapter, far beyond what either of them could have predicted. And in that exchange, it became clear that some connections don't fade with time. They grow stronger, even across decades, even across completely different worlds. When a teacher steps into a classroom, it's never just about passing exams or memorizing facts. And that truth hits even harder when you look back years later and realize what they really gave you in that moment. They don't simply pour information into your head just so you can pass a test and move on with life. What they actually do is shape how you interpret everything around you, like they're handing you a completely new lens to see the world through. And if you're lucky enough to have a truly unforgettable teacher, that lens doesn't fade. It sticks with you, sharp and clear, long after school is over. You carry it into adulthood without even realizing it sometimes. You start making decisions through it, reacting through it, and eventually, if life keeps moving forward, you even pass that same lens down to your own children, like a quiet inheritance you didn't even know you were protecting. And that is exactly what Jim Embry became in Catherine's life, whether he ever fully understood it or not at the time. In the middle of a packed museum in Cornwall, surrounded by flashing cameras, strict schedules, and royal security locked in formation, she made sure that man felt every bit of that impact in real time. Now pause right there for a second, because this is where it gets personal for anyone watching this unfold. Think about your own life for a moment. Was there ever a teacher who changed the way you think, even just a little? Someone who said something or taught something that never really left you? If there is, that memory matters more than you think. And, honestly, moments like this are exactly why people started speaking up about it online. People were tagging teachers, naming them, remembering them, showing love in real time, because Catherine turned a private memory into a global emotional wave. Because when someone in her position does something that real, it hits different. Jim Embry's reaction after the moment made everything even heavier in meaning, because what came next wasn't loud, dramatic, or attention-seeking. It was calm, grounded, and deeply human in a way that caught people off guard. After the footage spread everywhere and social media exploded with reactions, reporters immediately went looking for him. The internet was already on fire with clips and screenshots, people zooming in, replaying the hug, trying to understand who this man was and why this moment felt so powerful. When journalists finally reached him, they expected a big emotional speech or something dramatic. But what they got was the complete opposite. Jim Embry responded in the most simple, humble way possible, almost like he wasn't even trying to turn it into something bigger than it was. And that alone made people respect him even more. He said Catherine hadn't changed at all, that she was still just as kind and lovely as she had been when she was a young student over 2 decades ago. No exaggeration, no inflated storytelling, no attempt to make himself look important in the moment, just a quiet truth from someone who knew her before the world ever did. He remembered her as that young girl in his classroom, focused, curious, absorbing everything around her, and standing there years later, seeing her as the Princess of Wales, he still saw that same person underneath it all. And that kind of statement carries weight, because it strips away all the titles and leaves only character behind. Now think about that in contrast to everything Catherine has lived through since then. The public pressure, the constant attention, the expectations of royalty, the emotional weight of being watched almost every day of her life. Add to that personal challenges, health struggles, public scrutiny, and the intense responsibility of raising a future king, and you start to understand how rare it is for someone to still be recognized as unchanged in the most human sense. Because according to the man who knew her before everything, she stayed the same at her core. That's not something you hear often about people in her position. That speaks less about status and more about character, the kind that doesn't shift just because the world around you does. That moment alone reframed everything people thought they knew about her, because beneath the crown, beneath the media image, beneath all the formal appearances, there was still a person who remembered someone who once taught her in a classroom. And that says a lot about how she carries herself. Now, the reason this moment exploded globally wasn't just because it was emotional. It was because it broke expectations in a world where everything is usually controlled, rehearsed, and carefully managed. Within hours, clips of the hug were circulating everywhere. News outlets across different countries picked it up instantly. Social media timelines filled up with reactions, emotional comments, and people sharing their own memories of teachers who impacted their lives. It became more than just a royal moment. It became a shared human experience. People were saying things like, "This is why she's loved," and reacting with pure emotion. Some even admitting they didn't expect to feel that affected by a royal interaction. And the reason it landed so strongly is actually simple. It wasn't polished, it wasn't staged, and it wasn't designed for cameras. It was real recognition between two people who shared history, nothing more complicated than that. In a world where public figures are often expected to maintain distance and protocol at all times, Catherine did the opposite. She closed the gap instantly. And that contrast is what made it unforgettable. We live in a world where status and structure usually decide how people are supposed to act in public spaces, especially in royal environments where every second is scheduled, every movement is planned, and every interaction is controlled, down to the smallest detail. Royals don't usually break formation like that. They don't step outside the schedule. They don't suddenly abandon everything just because they recognize someone from their past. But Catherine did exactly that. And in doing so, she sent a message without needing a speech or press statement. She showed that human connection can override hierarchy in an instant when it truly matters. That recognition, that hug, that moment of breaking protocol, it said more than any official appearance ever could. because in that brief interruption of routine, people saw something unfiltered, something honest, something deeply relatable. And in today's world, that kind of authenticity spreads fast because people are hungry for it. Now, when you zoom out from the emotional reaction, you start to see something even more meaningful about Catherine as a person. This wasn't a one-time behavior or a random emotional slip. Over the years, she's consistently shown a pattern of choosing genuine human connection over distance and performance. Whether it's the way she interacts with children, how she engages with people at public events, or how she carries herself in difficult moments, there's a consistency there that people notice, even if they don't always say it out loud. Even during highly challenging personal times, she's maintained a level of openness that feels rare in her position. And this moment, with Jim Embry, just amplified that truth in a way the world couldn't ignore, because it showed that she doesn't just remember people. She values them in a way that stays with her for decades. And that brings everything back to one simple idea that keeps echoing through this entire story. Teachers don't always know the full impact of what they do. Jim Embry stood in front of a classroom doing what teachers everywhere do: teaching, guiding, explaining, repeating lessons, hoping it all lands somewhere meaningful. And most of the time, they never get to see where those lessons go. They never see the long-term effect. They never know which student carried it forward into adulthood, into leadership, into life-changing roles. But this time, one of them did. And in the most unexpected way, in front of cameras, in the middle of a royal visit, he found out exactly what his work became inside the life of one of the most recognized women in the world. And that realization alone carries a weight that goes far beyond one hug in a museum. It reflects how deeply influence can travel without ever asking for attention. It always comes back to this: St. Andrew's School and Catherine's early years, because that's where the roots of this entire story quietly begin. Understanding her childhood context makes this moment with Jim Embry hit much deeper, because it shows this wasn't random emotion. It was built on years of lived experience. St. Andrew's School in Pangbourne, Berkshire wasn't just a place she studied. It was a structured, tradition-heavy environment where teachers often left a lasting impact far beyond the classroom. These weren't temporary lessons that disappeared after exams. They were formative relationships that shaped how students saw the world and their place in it. And Catherine carried that forward with her. Her respect for education has always been consistent, not something added later in life as a royal, but something rooted in how she was raised and taught. Through her Royal Foundation's work in early childhood development, she has repeatedly emphasized one core belief: that the earliest years of life and the adults in those years shape everything that follows. That belief didn't come from reports or strategy. It came from real classrooms, real teachers, and real experiences that stayed with her. So when she told Jim Embry, "The things you taught me, I now teach to my children," it wasn't just gratitude. It was a reflection of how deeply those early lessons still guide her today. Because for Catherine, education has never been just academic. It is generational. It carries forward. It echoes into the future in ways people don't always notice until much later. And Jim Embry's classroom became part of that echo in a way that has now reached far beyond what anyone could have expected. Now that influence continues into the next generation, the Wales children. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are growing up in an environment where learning is natural, not forced, and where curiosity is part of everyday life. They are not just future royals being trained, they are children being raised with a strong sense of history, thinking, and emotional understanding. And that comes directly from Catherine. Imagine a simple moment at home. Prince George asking about British history, and Catherine explaining it in a way that makes it feel alive, not distant. Even without mentioning it directly, the influence of Jim Embry is still there in how she teaches and explains the world. Because he didn't just teach facts. He shaped how she understood meaning and connection. Jim Embry taught one student. That student is now raising 3 children. and one of those children will one day be king. That's a ripple effect most people never get to see. But it is powerful when you stop and think about it. One classroom moment spreading across generations, tied to the future of the monarchy. That alone changes how you look at this story. Now, people often connect Catherine's actions to something deeper in royal history, the idea of the people's princess legacy. That phrase is strongly associated with Princess Diana, who was known for her rare ability to connect with people in a direct, human way. She broke protocol not for attention, but because she saw people as people first. Catherine has always treated that comparison carefully and respectfully, without trying to step into it or replace it. But moments like this naturally bring that connection up again in public conversation. Because what people saw in that museum wasn't formality. It was human instinct. She chose the person over the protocol. She chose warmth over distance. She chose connection over structure. And that's why it resonated so strongly across the world. Not because it was planned, but because it felt real. Catherine wasn't acting as an institution in that moment. She was simply acting as herself. And Jim Embry became part of something much bigger than either of them expected. Stepping back from the emotional side, there's also a wider meaning here about authenticity in today's world. People are constantly surrounded by polished images, controlled messaging, and carefully managed public appearances. That's why real, unplanned moments stand out so strongly. They can't be staged in a believable way. They either happen or they don't. And when Catherine recognized someone from her past and immediately acted on it, it broke through all expectations of royal behavior. That's exactly why the moment spread so quickly around the world. Not because it was promoted, but because it was real. Real moments always move faster than manufactured ones ever could. And at the center of it all is Jim Embry, a retired teacher, a volunteer, a man who wasn't seeking attention, just living his life quietly. But decades earlier, he stood in a classroom and taught, and one of his students never forgot him. That student grew into the Princess of Wales and made sure the world saw his impact in one moment. He holds no title and no fame, but he shaped someone who now stands at the center of global attention. And that kind of influence cannot be measured in status. It is only seen through moments like this. Moments where memory, gratitude, and human connection come together in a way that lasts. And at its core, this is also a story about Catherine, the woman behind the crown, the mother who remembers her teachers, and the public figure who still chooses human connection, even in structured environments. Because in the end, that is what people saw. Not protocol breaking for attention, but recognition of someone who mattered in her past. And that's why this moment continues to stay with people long after it happened. If this story moved you, give it a thumbs up. It really helps more people see these moments. And make sure to subscribe to Royal Catherine News and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Now I want to hear from you. Who was your Jim Embry? Who shaped your life without even realizing it? Drop it in the comments. We're talking about real stories here. And before you go, take a moment to appreciate the people who once guided you, because sometimes their impact only becomes clear years later. See you in the next one.